I was utterly exhausted. 3 straight days of no sleep, too much work, and non-stop partying had completely drained me. By the time I stumbled back home, I could barely keep my eyes open. I collapsed into bed, hoping for just a moment of peace. But that night, peace was the last thing I found. I woke up in the middle of the night and that familiar sinking dread washed over me. I knew what was happening. It was sleep paralysis. This wasn't my first time experiencing it, but no matter how many times it happens, the fear never lessens. My body was frozen, but my senses were wide awake. At first, it was quiet. Then, I heard it. Something was moving on the floor, slowly creeping across the room. My heart was pounding as the sound of shuffling grew closer. I wanted to move, to sit up and see what it was, but I couldn't. My body betrayed me. The noise didn't stop. Whatever it was crawling around my bed. I strained to look, but it stayed just out of sight. Then I heard it, scratching. Long, sharp nails scraping against the floorboards. The sound sent chills through me. This wasn't something small like a rat or mouse. It was heavy, large, and deliberate. It felt massive, as if it could swallow me whole. The scratching became frantic, and I could hear it moving faster, circling my bed. My chest felt heavy, and panic consumed me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then, I felt it, the weight of something climbing onto my blanket, pressing down on my legs. It was there, on me. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was real. My mind raced, and fear hit its peak. In a final act of desperation, I forced myself to scream. My voice finally broke through the paralysis, and with that, I woke up. The room was still. No sound, no movement. Just me, gasping for air, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't my first encounter with sleep paralysis, and I knew it wouldn't be my last. Trying not to dwell on it, I rolled onto my side, shut my eyes, and drifted back into sleep, as if nothing had happened. It was an ordinary night. My wife and I had gone to bed after a long day, and I was completely drained. At some point in the middle of the night, half asleep, I rolled over onto my side, turning away from her. That's when it happened. My eyes fluttered open, and for a moment I didn't register anything out of the ordinary. But then, out of the corner of my vision, I saw it. A face. Pale, lifeless, and unblinking, it peered at me from just beyond the edge of the bed. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and an icy wave of terror washed over me. I tried to move, to scream, to do anything, but my body was locked in place. The face didn't move, didn't blink. It just stared. Its hollow eyes seemed to bore into me, as if it was waiting for something. The fear built until it was unbearable. Finally, a scream tore out of me, breaking the paralysis. The moment I regained control, I jolted upright, gasping for air. I frantically looked around the room, but there was nothing there. Just me, my wife still asleep, and the suffocating darkness. It felt so real. Even now, I can't shake the image of that pale, deathly face watching me from the shadows. I woke up in the dead of night, completely paralyzed. My body was frozen, my eyes locked on the wall in front of me. That's when I noticed it. The wall was moving. At first it was subtle, like the surface was rippling, but then a figure began to emerge. Its face was a horrific sight, the skin sagging and melting, thick drops of flesh dripping onto the floor. The sound of each drip echoed in the silence, like heavy raindrops on a tin roof. The figure was drawn toward me, its eyes locked onto mine. The skin on its face continued to melt, revealing raw, bloody muscle beneath. Its mouth twisted into a gruesome smile as it got closer, each step slow and deliberate. "You can't stop it," it whispered, its voice a wet, gurgling sound that sent chills through my veins. Soon you'll look just like me. Terror washed over me, a cold wave that paralyzed my mind as much as my body. I wanted to scream, to break free from this nightmare. But I was trapped, forced to watch, as the creature reached out a melting hand toward my face. The putrid smell of decay filled my nose, and the heat radiating from its melting skin was like standing too close to a fire. As its fingers grazed my cheek, burning into my skin, I finally found my voice. A scream ripped from my throat, and suddenly, I was free, sitting upright in my bed, drenched in sweat. The wall was still, the room was empty, but the smell lingered, and my cheek felt as though it had been scorched. I woke up, but I couldn't move. My body felt heavy, like I was pinned to the bed by an invisible force. The room was dark, but the shadows seemed wrong. They moved unnaturally, swirling around me like they were alive. Then I saw it, a shadowy figure, crouched above me on the ceiling, its long, thin arms reaching down. That's when I realized there were strings tied to my hands and feet. They glimmered faintly in the moonlight, almost invisible, but I could feel them pulling tight. The figure above me began to move, and so did I. My arms lifted against my will, jerking awkwardly, as if I was a marionette being controlled by an unseen force. My legs twitched, moving in strange, unnatural patterns. "Let me show you," the figure whispered, its voice cold and hollow, "how you'll dance in the afterlife." My body contorted, twisting in ways it shouldn't. Pain shot through my muscles as I was forced to perform its grotesque dance. The figure on the ceiling tilted its head, watching me with what I could only describe as a twisted delight. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. The strings were too tight, pulling every part of me under its control. My heart raced as the figure whispered again, "You're perfect, just one more step." Then, with one final jerk, my body fell back onto the bed. The strings vanished, and the shadowy figure melted into the ceiling. I was free, but I couldn't stop shaking. Even now, I can still feel the strings, faintly tugging at my limbs, waiting for the shadow puppeteer to return. I woke up in the middle of the night, but something was wrong. My body was frozen, my chest heavy. I tried to move, but I couldn't. The room was silent, too silent, and an uneasy feeling crept over me. That's when I felt it. My blanket began to tighten. Slowly at first, like a gentle hug, but then it grew stronger. The fabric clung to me, pulling tighter and tighter, wrapping around me like a cocoon. I tried to scream, but the blanket pressed against my mouth, smothering the sound. My breathing grew shallow as the pressure increased. The air felt hot and thick, and panic surged through me as I realized I couldn't get free. Then, I heard it. A voice, soft and sinister, coming from inside the fabric. "It's so warm in here," it whispered. "Stay forever." My heart pounded as the blanket pulled tighter, squeezing the life out of me. I fought to move, to break free, but my body was completely paralyzed. The voice continued, soothing and malicious all at once. "Why would you ever want to leave? We'll keep you safe. Just let go." Tears streamed down my face as the world started to fade. My lungs burned for air, and just as I felt like I was about to slip away, I let out a muffled scream. Suddenly I woke up. The blanket was loose again, my body was free, and I was gasping for breath. But the warmth of the blanket felt wrong, as if it was still holding on to me. Even now, I can't sleep without kicking the blanket off. I'm terrified it's waiting to wrap me up again. It was one of those wild nights. My life was full of chaos, parties, nonstop action, and far too much indulgence in everything. By the time I finally stumbled back to my apartment on the 20th floor, I was exhausted, barely able to think straight. The summer air was heavy, and I had left the balcony door open in the bedroom. The pale glow of the moonlight spilled into the room as I collapsed onto my bed, hoping for peace. But instead, I found a nightmare. At some point during the night I woke up, but I couldn't move. My chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me. My eyes darted around the room, and that's when I saw it. There on the balcony, bathed in the silvery light of the moon, was a figure. A demon. Its twisted body crouched low, like it was waiting for me. Its eyes glowed faintly, filled with a dark, malicious energy. It didn't move, but its lips did. It began to whisper, soft, sinister words, calling me to the balcony. "Come here," it whispered. "Come closer." Fear flooded my body, but I couldn't move. The demon tilted its head, its smile widening as if it knew I was trapped. My mind screamed at me to fight back, to break free, but my body refused to listen. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. Its words felt like they were slithering into my mind, pulling me toward it. I could feel my will weakening, like it was drawing me in. Then, with a final burst of desperation, I screamed. The sound tore through the silence, and in that moment, I broke free. I jolted awake, gasping for air, my body drenched in sweat. The balcony was empty, but the door was still open. I slammed it shut and locked it, unable to shake the feeling that something had been watching me. Even now, when I look at that balcony, I can still hear the whispers. I woke up instantly alert, but I couldn't move. My body felt like it was glued to the bed, completely paralyzed. My eyes darted around the room, landing on the mirror across from my bed. That's when I noticed something was wrong. My reflection was moving. Not slightly, not a trick of the light. It was smiling. A cruel, twisted grin spread across its face, something I knew I wasn't doing. It leaned closer to the glass, its eyes locked on mine, as if it could see straight into my soul. Then it spoke, its voice low and distorted. "Switch places with me," it hissed. "Just let go." My chest felt heavy, my breath shallow, as if the words themselves were pulling me out of my body. The reflection pressed its hands against the inside of the glass, pushing as though it was trying to break through. "You don't belong here," it said, that grin widening unnaturally. "But I do." I tried to move, to close my eyes, but I was frozen. My reflection began to laugh, a low, guttural sound that echoed in my mind. Its movements became erratic, its head tilting at impossible angles. The last thing it whispered was, "I'm waiting for you," before I finally broke free. I shot up in bed, my heart pounding, drenched in sweat. The mirror was still. My reflection was normal, but even now, when I look at it, I swear I see a faint smile lingering, as if it's still waiting for me to let go. I woke up instantly, my body heavy and paralyzed. Something felt wrong. The room was silent, but the air was thick, like it was pressing down on me. Then I felt it, sharp, cold claws digging into my legs. At first, it was a faint pressure, but then it grew stronger. The pain became unbearable, like nails tearing into my skin. My heart pounded as I tried to move, but my body refused to listen. Suddenly, I saw it. Bloody scratches appeared on my thighs, one after the other, as if an invisible force was tearing into me. The searing pain was real. My breathing quickened, panic consuming me. But there was nothing there. Then, I heard it. A low, guttural growl right beside my ear. It was deep, vicious, and unmistakably real. My stomach dropped. My mind screamed, but the growl faded, leaving only silence and the blood. Finally, I broke free. I sat up, gasping, my legs burning with pain. When I pulled back the blanket, the scratches were still there. Fresh, red, and unmistakable. I still don't know what left those marks, but every night since I've felt the faint pressure of claws. waiting to dig in again. I woke up in the middle of the night. Everything felt off. The room was too quiet, an unnatural, suffocating silence. My chest felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. That's when I noticed it. The darkness in the corner of my room wasn't still. It was moving, pulsating, as if it was alive. My eyes locked onto it, and I realized it was breathing. Slow, deep inhales and exhales, the sound barely audible, but enough to send shivers through my body. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, but my mind was screaming. The darkness grew, expanding like a shadow stretching over the walls. Then something began to emerge. A figure. Its form was indistinct at first, just a mass of swirling blackness. But as it moved closer, I saw its shape. A twisted, hulking form, breathing deeply as though it was savoring my fear. With each step, the sound of its breathing grew louder, heavier, filling the room. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Its presence was overwhelming, like it was pulling the air out of my lungs. It stopped at the edge of my bed. I could feel its breath on my face, hot, ragged, and relentless. My heart pounded as it leaned in closer, its shadowy form hovering inches away. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, the figure let out a final, long exhale. Then it vanished, as if it had never been there. I jolted awake, gasping for air, my body trembling. But the corner of the room still felt wrong, as if the darkness was watching, waiting for me to fall asleep again. I woke up to the sensation of someone staring at me. My body was completely frozen, and the room was filled with a deafening silence, the kind that makes your ears ring. I could feel it. Something was in the room with me. I tried to move my eyes, desperate to find the source, but all I could see was the ceiling. That's when I heard it, a faint sound, like whispering. No, not one voice, hundreds. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, as if fighting to be heard. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it. A face, pale, distorted, and wrong. It was staring at me from the side of the bed just inches away, its expression twisted into a grotesque smile. But it didn't stay still. Its face began to change. The smile stretched unnaturally wide, then melted into a look of agony. Its eyes swelled, its jaw cracked and dislocated, and it kept changing, faster and faster. The face didn't just morph, it multiplied. More faces began spilling out from its skin. They were everywhere, screaming, laughing, crying, each one twisted with unimaginable pain, staring at me with eyes that seemed to plead for help. I wanted to scream, but my throat was locked tight. My breath quickened as the faces began to crawl. They spilled out of its body, crawling onto the walls, the ceiling, and the floor. They surrounded me, their mouths moving in perfect sync, whispering one word over and over, "Join." Then the first face returned, leaning closer. Its smile widened until its jaw split open, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Your turn," it hissed, its voice echoing inside my mind. The faces closed in, pressing against me, their cold, slimy skin smothering me. My chest burned as I fought to breathe, and just when I thought I'd be lost in the sea of faces forever, I woke up. I sat up, gasping, my heart slamming against my ribs. The room was silent again, but when I looked at the wall, I swore I saw the faint outline of a face, watching me,